curating your brand and sharing your story, but think about every single touch point. How do you greet someone when you walk into a room? What do you wear? How do you follow up after a first interaction? Are you open to being a podcast guest or doing a keynote talk? And a lot of those things to begin with need to be on a voluntary basis or tapping into your network, but they're all ways to build your brand in a way that's authentic and build up that confidence as you go. So those, just a few of the ways you can look at your brand at sort of multiple touch points.
That is brand strategist Emma Donovan, sharing some perspective on the importance of personal brand and how it is in everything that we do. So own your story and get your message out in the way that is authentic and genuine to you. We talk about that and so much more in this episode of The Star Coach Show. Hello, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here. We have an awesome topic today in that we're going to be looking at personal branding. Now, this is the thing about personal branding. Whether you are an internal coach, an external coach who's trying to build a business or who has a business, whether you are a leader, whatever you do, and whatever your focus is, you have a personal brand. The question is, are you paying attention to what that personal brand is? And that's exactly what my guest is here to talk about today. I'm going to be telling you more about Emma Donovan in just a moment and a little bit more about what you can expect in today's show. I'm Meg Rentschler. I'm the host of the Star Coach Show. And as an executive coach, as well as a coach educator and a mentor coach who has worked with thousands of both leaders and coaches to get traction in whatever direction they're going in to help create the kind of impact they want in the world. The reality is we all have a way that we're showing up. And my question to you is, as we are closing out the first quarter of the year, what are you doing to be certain that you're moving in the direction that you want to move into? What are you doing to be intentional about your next steps? That's what we focus on here at the Star Coach Show. That's what I do in the work that I do with clients, whether it's through this show, whether it's through the many programs that I run for coaches, or the work that I do in my executive coaching business. It's about helping you communicate in the way that you want to help others step into their own creativity, their own energy, so that you are helping others as a leader, as a coach, create the kind of impact they want to in the world. And through that, how are you meeting your goals and really your passions in life? So thanks for being here. That's the journey that we're on together. And in this journey, I'm partnering with Emma Donovan. Now, as we think about personal branding, it just makes a whole lot of sense to bring in a brand strategist. Emma Donovan is co-founder and brand strategist at Dapper. She is an established professional with over 15 years experience in brand strategy, content writing, and entrepreneurship. Her ability to identify and seize an opportunity has played a significant role in her entrepreneurial journey, and I think you're going to hear that in the interview. She has the superpower that injects enthusiasm and vibrancy and playfulness in any situation. She was a lot of fun to spend time with. At Dapper, she and her team focus on creating space for clients to gain clarity of purpose and confidence to own their authentic story. Exactly what we're talking about in today's interview. Emma personally excels in creating new products and collaborating with brilliant minds and connecting the dots for clients. So, in today's interview, she's going to be talking about how do we overcome the obstacles that we hit when we're thinking about our own personal branding. What do we need to do to build confidence, to create clarity? All those are things that we're going to do today as we think about sustainable ways you can approach your personal brand development and stay authentic, building your brand with intention. That word intention again. So let's go to my interview with Emma Donovan. Emma, welcome to the Star Coach Show.
Thanks, Meg. It's great to be here today.
I have been looking forward to it. We had such a lovely introductory call, and we decided with all the things that you could talk about, what makes sense for helping those who are listening get the momentum they need in building business and creating clarity about what people know about them is understanding this concept of personal brand. So you are a personal brand development specialist. When we think about personal brand, Emma, where do we even want to start? Let's set the lens for people to look through as they consider this concept of personal brand.
Thanks, Meg. Yeah, I think that is a great starting point. I think people often associate a brand with a company logo, or if they think personal brand, they're like, no, I don't need one of those. And what I love to sort of respond with is, well, you already have a brand. It's just whether you choose to own the story and shape that narrative. So I think that's a great sort of lens to look at through, is that your brand is how you show up in the world. It's not something that you curate. Well, you absolutely can curate it, but it's not something you build. It's more something you elevate and evolve. And a big thing for us is, how do you do that in a way that's authentic so that it's not tiring? If you're wearing a mask all day or trying to put on a persona, it is going to take its toll and possibly be difficult to maintain. So we often talk about your professional brand as how you bring your personal and your company brand together. I think a lot of your listeners being coaches, that's something that, may resonate in terms of you don't have a company necessarily with lots of people, but you do have a business. And so how do you get that alignment?
Love that. So one of the things you said is own the story, kind of hold the pen to your own story. Don't give the pen to somebody else, right? So when you work with your clients to build their own story, to own their own story, not build, but like you said, sort of elevate it. And what are some of the things that you know to be true as some of the struggles that we can go through in just sort of maybe getting clear or building an understanding maybe even of what we're doing?
Absolutely. So I think the first hurdle is often some kind of imposter syndrome. I found that we have clients at all different career stages, different industries, different countries, and they seem to share this imposter syndrome that shows up in different ways. And often it is one of two things. It's a lack of confidence because they haven't, built up that confidence in themselves, or it's not sure how to position their brand because they don't want to be seen as arrogant, or they don't want to be seen as promoting themselves too much. So there's often a lot of work around coming back to that authenticity and what value do you have? It's a two-way street. It's communicating with your audience and your community rather than selling something. So for us, brand really is that foundation before you market yourself or your business. It's getting comfortable in your skin, and it's getting that clarity on who are you and what's important to you. A lot of it is figuring out that sort of fundamental why behind what you do before you jump into the how.
So if we, let's say, understand that our desire is to help our clients overcome certain hurdles or achieve certain results, I think what I'm hearing you say is the clearer we are about that, the more we can lean into the results or the outcome rather than I'm just the best coach that's ever walked the face of the earth kind of thing. I mean, like to be able to be maybe focused on outcomes and results rather than getting wrapped up in I'm just talking about how awesome I am. Is that kind of the
Absolutely.
distinction
And
you're making?
Yeah, giving your potential clients something to resonate with. So I think that vulnerability piece, that being able to share a bit of your story, I think, Meg, that's something you've done and would be lovely to hear a bit more about that, of bringing your personality and your own journey into your brand story. It makes it real, it makes it relatable. And again, it's you can't trip up on your story if it's authentic. So you don't have to worry about what angle am I going to share, how am I going to position myself. It's just owning that story.
Okay. One of the things that I find really resonates with the executives that I work with is letting them know. And what's interesting, Emma, is that when I first transitioned from being a psychotherapist, I'd been a psychotherapist for over 20 years. I had determined through the people that I was seeing in my psychotherapy practice that they were really struggling with work environments and unhealthy work environments and not being either given the tools they needed to lead or being led by organizations that pretty obviously didn't recognize them or appreciate them. That was my push out of the nest as a therapist into being a coach because I thought I need to help organizations be healthier. This kind of helping people react to that environment instead of being proactive and helping to maybe change that environment was a huge motivator for me. So when I speak with leaders and when I help leaders use coaching as their leadership style, they really resonate with that message that I felt almost like pulled or, like I said, pushed out of the nest of this business that I built for over 20 years of being a psychotherapist to no, girlfriend, you got to do something different to respond to what's going on. But this is sort of the little hook in there that I'd love your feedback on. When I first transitioned, I didn't want anybody to know that I'd been a therapist. I felt like executives would be like, "Oh, I don't want her to psychoanalyze me. I don't want to." So I tried to minimize my history of having been a therapist and really focused instead on the training that I'd had or the newness of this executive coaching, and that was like shooting myself in the foot. It was a horrible unauthentic thing to do, and yet I did it for probably a couple of years at first, like really tried to minimize my therapy background and maximize. And what's funny is that I was minimizing where my real
Substance and learnings.
thank you. And was maximizing something that I was super new at. So that didn't work well.
Yeah, I think I've seen that so many times. And I'm smiling because it's just in the moment, it just feels like the right thing to do. I totally get it. It's like you want to build this new brand and focus, and you're excited about it. But the reality is, most, I would say, people now have a winding career path. They draw on experience and expertise in a completely different field. I often share the story that I worked in a ski chalet for a year in my 20s, and that hospitality experience and the responsibility and all sorts of things were such a solid foundation for running a business in a completely different space years later. So
Right.
it's often in your case, it was very aligned in terms of the experience, but it can be something in a completely different industry. To the point that I now, when I'm interviewing, if someone's CV has that winding path, they do stand out to me because I think they've got life experience, they've traveled, or they've experienced a new way of thinking, and that often really gives you an edge and helps you have that brand that is unique. So I
Right.
think it's a thank you for the share. I think it's a great example of, yeah, that sort of not really sure where it's going to fit in, and in hindsight, seeing the value of bringing
Right.
that story together. Yeah.
And now that is really, sort of what people are thankful for that. They are that tends to be what draws my clients to me is the mix of,
Yeah.
like you said, all the paths that I've walked. And I will sit here with you right now and say that I absolutely believe that those years and years that I waitressed from, middle school through my graduate degree gave me a different perspective on people and the way that people engage and customer service and, really caring about how what we do impacts other people. That was huge. And, because
Mm.
you can't be a thriving service provider who lives on tips if you are not, good at meeting people's needs.
Absolutely. And a quick side note on that, I think we often chat to young professionals around their CVs and their LinkedIn profiles, and they often list their experience. But what I encourage them to do is say just one or two lines, what did you learn? And how can you apply that in a new industry? So just to the point we've been talking about is it's what's the learning there?
Love that. And I love that that's a little bonus here for all you listeners. When you're thinking about your LinkedIn profile, do what Emma's saying. Every path that you've walked has given you unique talents and strengths that you've built. So highlight those.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So good. So, all right. So we realize that our personal brand is who we are, all the experience that we're bringing. Well, how do we share that? Okay, we're like, all right, I kind of get what it is. What do I do with that now?
So again, I think it really depends what you're trying to work towards. I think as a coach, it's about resonating with potential clients would be for me one of the top things. I don't know if there are others that come to mind for you, but it's sort of positioning yourself in a way that you are attracting the right clients, you're sharing your knowledge and expertise, and you are carving out a space for yourself to kind of stand. I wouldn't want to say above other coaches, but stand out from other coaches.
Right.
And what we like to do at Dapper is look beyond a LinkedIn profile. I think it's a really great place to start in terms of curating your brand and sharing your story. But think about every single touch point. How do you greet someone when you walk into a room? What do you wear? How do you follow up after a first interaction? Are you open to being a podcast guest or doing a keynote talk? And a lot of those things to begin with need to be on a voluntary basis or tapping into your network, but they're all ways to build your brand in a way that's authentic and build up that confidence as you go. So those, just a few of the ways you can look at your brand at sort of multiple touch points.
Right. And if you're using social media, how are you authentically showing up in your posts, in videos that you're doing, in ways that you are? And I think that sometimes coaches get so wrapped up in, I don't know what to say, or I don't know what to, I don't want to look less than perfect. I mean, it's once again leaning into that authentic self, right?
Absolutely. And we always say done is better than perfect. So don't procrastinate and put off starting, and don't over edit. So if you've got a video, check the lighting, look into the camera, but don't worry if you pause or say or need to sort of just catch your breath. It's way more natural and engaging than something that's overly polished, unless it is, for example, your company brand video, which you're going to spend more time on editing. So there is a time and a place for edited content, but I would say most people respond well to something that is more natural and engaging rather than perfect, especially with video content. It's such a great way to get engagement and for people to get a sense of who you are, and can be so much quicker to create once you're comfortable in front of the camera than writing out long posts that may get lost in a news feed full of other content.
Yeah, people are going to you're more magnetic being yourself than being a persona.
Absolutely. And I think another point we haven't touched on is do things that bring you joy. So I know when we first spoke, you spoke about the podcast and how much you enjoy chatting to new people. And that just makes it so much easier to get up in the morning and do it again. So it's finding ways to share your brand story that you actually enjoy doing, so it doesn't feel like a chore.
Because there are probably 1,000 different things that you could do to get out there, to connect and do. So what is it that you can really do that you love doing versus feeling like you're taking medicine? It's because then you're going to have that taking medicine look on your face and people aren't going to be attracted to that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Emma, earlier you said there's two main sort of obstacle paths that your clients bump into. One was, I don't want to come off arrogant and not be able to present myself well. And we said that, you sort of lean into the results and you lean into maybe as a coach, the transformation rather than how awesome you are. But what about that piece of confidence? The other side was, I just don't have the confidence or I don't know how to get out there. What do you advise those types of clients to do to get over that obstacle?
So often it's going back to that clarity that we spoke about. So clarity of purpose for us is huge. So why do you want to build a brand? What does your brand stand for? We've built an online course, which is a 3-month course called Brand Yourself. And we've got a special for your listeners in the show notes if they want to check that
Excellent.
out. But the reason behind that was really to create a framework to help people build that confidence. So there are a lot of practical steps you can do, exercises. We've got some coaches involved to help us with that content as well, to really go like, what are practical ways you can build confidence? And a sort of example from my own story is I used to prefer, well, maybe if I'm honest, still prefer being behind the camera rather than in front of it. But I realized that I needed to walk the talk. If I was telling my clients to do a keynote talk, I needed to stand up and do one. And when one of our clients asked me to speak at their annual conference, my sort of internal reaction was, oh no, please, no, no, no. And I got up and did it. And I was nervous and maybe over prepared. So I wasn't as sort of relaxed as I could have been, but I did it and it went well. And I got invited to another talk off the back of that. And it's now something that I really look forward to. I don't over prepare. I, really think about my audience and how I can add value. And it was just taking that first step out of my comfort zone, knowing that it was going to be terrifying, but that it was part of the brand I wanted to build. So what held me back was fear rather than a lack of alignment or not wanting to do it. And I think distinguishing between those two is important because it's understanding what is holding you back. Is it a glass ceiling that you can work through with the right support? And that conference, I had my business partner, Lindsay, in the audience, and just having her there, knowing she was there, made all the difference. So it's also about who is your support network. Ask for help. Don't try and do it alone. And just take that first step. It can be, for some people, just updating their LinkedIn profile and putting out a post or adding a comment. It doesn't have to be something big and scary, especially if you're more introverted and not wanting to be in that limelight.
Well, and the other thing that was sort of implied in what you said is this isn't like flipping a switch and all of a sudden, like even when I transitioned from 20 plus years in private practice as a therapist to an executive coach, it wasn't like I flipped a switch and I'm no longer a therapist. Now I'm a coach. Well, I had to sort of transition out of one and into the other. So I was slowly decreasing therapy clients and increasing coaching clients. But even, people saw me as a therapist. I had built that brand and it takes a while. And I think sometimes, I'll work with coaches who are like, okay, I just want this to happen now. I mean, we all want it to happen now, right? But people need to begin to see you through that light. So you can't be a secret. You've got to let people know that what you're doing and get out there in whatever ways that Emma's talking about. But also it is a progression. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And it's micro steps in the right direction. You can't wave a wand or click your fingers and be there. And I think a lot of people fall into the trap of looking at influencers or people with really established brands and going, I'm not like that. Instead of going, what were they like 10, 20 years ago?
Right.
And maybe that's something you could also share around about getting your brand from being a brand new coach to where you are today.
Right. And that is something that's very much, it's on my website. It's on my, I talk about it with the coaches that I work with because it is a process. And I find that we need to give ourselves at least 2 to 3 years to begin to build the momentum now that doesn't mean that we're not working at all for 2 to 3 years, but to really begin to build and be seen the way that you want it to be recognized. It might take even longer than that. And yet, so give yourself the grace to kind of grow into that versus, if there was a light switch for it, we would all love that, but I don't think there is.
No, and I think it's so much more rewarding when you've put in the work and been
Right.
intentional. There's just that sense of, yeah, satisfaction and fulfillment that comes from doing something well rather than doing something fast. So we often say to our clients, the work we do with you is important, not urgent. So don't try and cram it into a 5 minute break. Actually create some space and enjoy the process.
Love that. So you had
Yeah.
mentioned that there is, and I had this question that I absolutely wanted to ask you and it frittered away, but that's okay. We're gonna keep coming back to, so you talked in our pre-interview about the fact that we do this all the time. So how can we keep our brand top of mind, but also not have it so top of mind that it's interfering because we've got all this chatter about like, am I putting my brand out there the way that, like, how can we do it all the time and yet, so we want to be responsible about that, but we don't want to be obsessed, I would say.
Absolutely. I think one of my favorite lines is that discipline gives you freedom. So if you have the discipline to post consistently, and that's different for everyone, it may be once a day, once a week, once a fortnight, but just to get into that rhythm, I think really helps because it gives you the freedom then the rest of the time to not think about it and worry about it, knowing that you've kind of got it there in the background. And it's a tricky balance. You don't want it to be too scripted, but you can plan some of your content in advance. For example, experience shares or feedback from your clients or tips for your readers or your
Mhm.
listeners. And then in between that, we really recommend more spontaneous posts about a conversation that inspired you or a podcast episode that you loved and why. So it's just, again, giving your audience a glimpse into your everyday life, not just your expertise. So we talk about having different content pillars that you can build stories around. And I think that also helps because it's not just always one thing that you're talking about.
Right.
It's actually having a few different things, again, coming back to your passions and what you enjoy doing and bringing that into your story.
And when you share something that was meaningful to you or that you gained value from, you're giving a gift to the people who are reading that post because they could also get value from that or see it a different way and start a conversation. If we sort of look at life as what's coming up for me, and rather than minimizing what's coming up for me, what's coming up for me that I might share that might trigger something for somebody else or get them excited about something. I think that life offers us opportunity after opportunity all day long about different things that we could talk about that are meaningful. I mean, we could talk about what we ate for breakfast, but what else might we talk about that could actually kind of impact somebody else, make them think about something, or help them understand you a little bit more?
Absolutely. And just sort of sharing the learnings you had along the way rather than just what you did or,
Right.
that sort of thing is really just taking it that one level deeper or making it a conversation. So I really do think there's so much magic in conversation that is spontaneous or organic. So another great way to get your brand out there is to do LinkedIn live interviews where it's short video interviews. You don't need a lot of prep and it's live, but you can also go back and see it later. And it's a great way to build confidence on video, but may feel more natural to some people than just having a camera in their face because it's a conversation if it's on Zoom or Google Meets, whatever it is, as a way to also have that more authentic conversation.
So good. So what else, if I were to say, like, what do you find that are some of the most prevalent either encouragement you need to give or of any other obstacles that you help your clients get out of the way to really help them thrive as in their industry and whatever industry, because you obviously work with more than coaches, but I'm willing to bet that you've got some themes that sort of run through what you
Yeah.
do.
So two that come up for me is writer's block and accountability. So with the writer's block, we have a couple of tips. One is to take 10. don't take more than 10 minutes to draft a quick post. And then you can come back to it and refine it. But just getting that initial thought down on paper or sharing it with a camera is often the hardest part. So don't worry about what your opening or closing line is. Those are great to add in later, but just get that substance down on paper. Something linked to that I find useful is having a note on your phone or a sort of app that's easy to access. And just as you have an idea, write down one line or send yourself a voice note, and then you've got that raw material. So when you have time or the inspiration strikes, you've got a starting point.
I love that. As a matter of fact, I've been working on a keynote address that I'm soon to give. And for the past couple months, I've been, just opening up my phone and saying a particular thing for me. Now, this has always been for me. It also is for Jack Canfield, by the way. I saw he wrote about this, that his great thoughts come up when he's in the shower. He actually has a whiteboard in his shower to capture those great thoughts. I have always like that. I guess that's just kind of when I'm, just relaxed and not thinking about things. Great thoughts roll out. But what do? I capture them the minute I get out of the shower on my phone. So maybe I should put a whiteboard in my shower. I don't know. I never thought about that. So I love that idea of, and so then when it came to actually creating the keynote itself, I had all these thoughts that were there that had come at these great creative times that I wasn't sitting at my laptop trying to create the keynote.
Under pressure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can relate to the ideas in the shower. I often have my best ideas in the swimming pool, swimming laps. And I keep saying I need to buy a waterproof pen or, those like kids drawing sets.
Yes.
I'm like, I need one of those next to the pool so I can just pop up, write it down, and carry on. So yeah.
Anybody listening who Emma is on your gift list, there you go. There's a great gift for Emma. I love that.
And then the other one is having someone to hold you accountable. So we often, in a session with a client, everyone's excited, they're inspired, they've got all these ideas to go and implement, but then real life happens and they have clients to see and families to feed and, just busy lives to run. So we can play that accountability role for our clients, or we say, find an accountability buddy. Get someone in your family, your team, whatever it is, to actually just be quite strict with you and say, right, you committed to drafting this keynote or connecting with 10 new people on LinkedIn. Again, doesn't matter how big or small it is, it's those micro steps in the right direction. So I use an app called AnyList, which I love, which is just easy to tick things off and categorize them. So that's my kind of personal checklist. But we definitely have it within the team at Dapper as well, of just holding each other accountable to building our brands in a way that's aligned to where we want to be.
Love that. And, as coaches, one of the things that we do is ask people, how are you going to hold yourself accountable to this? And what kind of support do you need? And that's exactly what Emma's talking about. How are you going to build that in for yourself? And otherwise, life will suck that. Just if we let other things make our priorities for us, that's not going to be top priority.
Yeah, absolutely.
So good. So Emma, we've talked about the fact that every coach needs a brand. We already have them. So how much are we going to own the story around that? And that our brand shows up everywhere. It shows up in the way we introduce ourselves, in the clothes we wear, in the conversations that we have, in the posts and the talks and all the blogs, all the things that we do. What have we left on the table, if anything, that you wanted to be sure we highlighted in our time together today?
I think we've covered, a lot of what we wanted to. I think just another tip in terms of LinkedIn and getting your brand out there is to ask for recommendations. So there's a way to do that on LinkedIn, which is great because then it's not, in an email that you've copied and pasted. It's there for everyone to see who's posted it. And again, to reciprocate that. So to give recommendations to people who you collaborate with or have mentored you, or even that you've worked with in a previous role. But it's a great way to get feedback that is, again, authentic. It shows your expertise without you having to blow your own trumpet too much. and just have that way to add a layer of credibility to what you do.
Love that. Emma, thank you so much for joining us and bringing your great expertise so that we can all think more about our personal brand. How are we owning it, putting it out there, and using it to help people understand us and want to work with us?
Oh, thank you, Meg. It's been lovely to chat.
Thank you, Emma Donovan, for bringing your branding expertise to the Star Coach Show. Such great information. If you want to know more about Emma and the work she does at Dapper, go to starcoachshow.com/381. Or if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, just grab the links below. In our Star Coach community, Emma continues her conversation with me regarding confidence. If you'd like to know more about our dynamic Star Coach community and join us, go to starcoachshow.com/community and learn about our 4 live events every single month, as well as those nuggets of information that you can get from our incredible Star Coach guests. Speaking of incredible guests, come back next week as I am introducing you to Laura Siebold, who is a coach consultant for leaders. She is the host of the Leadership Rediscovered podcast, and we're going to be looking at her framework for goal setting so that you can meet those goals and knock things out of the park. That's next week. Be sure to come back and join us. Until next week, this is Meg Rentschler wishing you the very best for your success. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and we'll see you next week.